2021, I entered treatment for my eating disorder, and I thought that would be the end of my running career. But in 2024, I became the best I've ever been.
My main goal tomorrow is to get the Olympic trials standard.
Just going to the Olympic trials. Never done that before. Never been close.
Got the lead.
Hell yeah.
I started the year unsure of whether I belonged on the start line, scared to begin races, afraid of failure, and unsure of what level runner I was capable of becoming. Throughout the year, I gained confidence, and I started to believe that I belonged, not just on the start line, but on the start line at the finals of the Olympic trials, fighting for an Olympic spot. I began the year with the initial goal of competing at the US Cross Country Championships. While I knew that placing in the top 6 would qualify me for World Cross, I didn't feel confident stating that as a goal. I just wanted to step to the line at a professional race and put myself in the mix. After years of battling injuries and an eating disorder with very few professional races and even less consistent training, I had lost belief in myself. I knew that I still had the passion and drive to train and compete, but I struggled to feel like I belonged. Instead of stepping to the start line of the US Cross Country Championships with confidence, I stood there petrified of embarrassing myself. I looked across at the other women on the line and thought that my body wasn't elite enough to be there. After years of deriving confidence from the size and appearance of my body, I didn't know where else to get it. How could I feel ready if the reflection in the mirror didn't tell me I was elite? At the time, I didn't have an answer to that, so I stepped to the line unsure and started the race wondering if I was making a huge mistake. I spent the first 6 kilometers of the race debating whether or not I should drop out. I kept running because I knew that every race would feel like this, with a swirling brain full of doubt unless I confronted it. And also my parents were there, and my dad is an aggressively loud cheerer, which was definitely encouraging. I ended up lean dive splatting my way to a 4th place finish and a spot on Team USA for the World Cross Country Championships. But the biggest one of the day was that the doubt in my head got just a little quieter. I spent the next couple months preparing to face the best cross-country runners in the world. 2 months later, I competed at Worlds. This time, I wasn't scared of being embarrassed. I was just really excited to represent Team USA and see what I could do. My goals were to be in the top 2 Americans and top 30 overall. Now, this race was pretty crazy. It had ramps, hay bales, mud pits, and very high heat and humidity. So I went out pretty conservative, but I moved up, especially during the later stages of the race, and I ended up finishing as the 2nd American and 30th overall. I loved the feeling of this race and how fully I was immersed in competing and pushing myself, but then I saw the photos. And instead of evoking fond memories of the race, the photos made me think I'm too big to be successful. But objectively, I was. I reached all my goals, so a small part of my brain said, maybe my idea of what a successful body looks like is just too small. Though the mirror wasn't giving me confidence, it was no longer taking it away. Worlds marked the end of my cross-country season and the beginning of my track season, where my first goal would be to qualify to the Olympic trials. I was so excited to run track, but part of me knew that track was also the ultimate test. While cross-country and trails are more based around competing and subjective performance, track is entirely objective. It's all about time and tactics, and your performance will be compared against every past performance. This objectively freaked out my brain because ever since pursuing ED recovery, I've avoided comparison as much as possible, but track made it impossible to keep playing the no comparisons game. However, I wanted it badly enough to go for it anyway. So now this track season wasn't just about qualifying to the Olympic trials. It was about beating my past self. My first track race was Peyton Jordan Invitational.
My main goal tomorrow is to get the Olympic trials standard, which is 9:41.0 or faster.
Before the race, I was jittered beyond belief, taken over by nerves that shot thoughts into my brain that said, what if you're slower? What if it's embarrassing? What if you never even get close to your past self? And while I was changing into my spikes before the race, I said to Spence, I'm just really struggling to believe in myself right now. And he told me that he understood, but that the first one would be the hardest, and I just needed to start so that the rest of my season could feel better. most of the race in no man's land, not confident enough to go with the leaders, but still holding on to my goal pace. However, as the race went on, I felt strong and managed to pick some people off, but I was still cutting it really close to that Olympic qualifying time.
41 to get the Olympic trials qualifier. It's gonna be close, people.
I ended up running 9:37, 9 seconds off my personal best of 9:26, but under the qualifying standard.
I guess we're going to the Olympic trials.
Oh, you're so concerned. It seems so painful. Why are you so worried?
I didn't know if I'd do it.
Now that I had qualified at the Olympic trials, my goal was to gain racing experience and confidence. I ran some good workouts.
Never done that before. Never been close.
Raced another steeplechase at LA Track Fest, where I got a season best of 9:32, and then headed to Boulder for an altitude camp. While at altitude, I got to be in person with my coach, David Roach, as he paced me in workouts. As I've talked about the mental shifts that occurred throughout this year, I attribute them to races and workouts and breakthrough moments, but honestly, most of them are more subtle, occurring over weeks and months as I write my thoughts in my training log, and David slowly convinces me to let go of the doubt and lean into belief.
It's about belief. Hold on to the kick. Right now, hold me. Come on, Allie. Hell yeah.
During a month of training in Boulder, he continued to foster belief as he paced me through some of the hardest and best workouts of my life and continually reminded me to reach into the belief bag.
Now's when we reach into the belief bag. Reach into that belief bag. You know what we do on the last one? Reach into the belief bag.
Throughout this time, I also had the unwavering support of Spencer. Both of our excitement levels continued to rise as I completed workouts that my past self never could have done.
Holy shit.
As I had these breakthroughs, I also realized that the fear and anxiety around racing that had haunted me for years was beginning to dissipate. The amount of joy and fulfillment that I gained from chasing after my goals and bettering my past performances already felt like such a monumental win, no matter how my next race went. Failure stopped being a dirty word and instead became a natural step on the way to finding my full potential.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about, Allie.
My next race was Portland Track Festival, which would be my last steeplechase before the Olympic trials. I went into it knowing I was the best I had ever been, but wanting to prove it.
Go, Allie! Nice job, Allie. Good positioning. Great. Nice job, Allie. Tuck right into that pack. Good job.
In the middle of the race, some of that belief that I had slowly built began to slip away, and I let the leaders get a gap on me.
Keep grinding, Allie. Keep grinding. Get up there now. Come on now, Allie.
But the belief didn't fully leave, and I managed to close the gap with 2 laps to go. Once I got a sniff of the possibility of a win, adrenaline flooded my body.
You're locked in. You look amazing. You're doing great. You're doing great.
I had forgotten how amazing it felt to win a race on the track, but with a lap to go, I was determined to remember.
You can win. You can win this. Just tuck in there. Take it at 200. I almost cried. Tears were leaving the eyes.
I ran a PR of 9:24. I was the best I'd ever been. Going into the trials, the belief bag wasn't just full, it was overflowing. I was packing up, ready to head to Canada for a 1500 race, my final tune-up before the trials, when the scratchy feeling in the back of my throat started to feel like more than just a scratchy throat. I tested positive for COVID, which was absolutely devastating, but David helped talk me through it, and luckily it turned out to be a fairly mild case. I was able to continue doing easy runs, and my heart rate data was looking good. 4 days out from the trials, I was able to do a track workout, and I didn't feel too unusual. I was trying to convince myself that the COVID case wouldn't impact me, but a little nagging voice in the back of my head wouldn't stop saying, "You aren't good enough. You never were." I headed into the trials knowing that voice might always be there, the belief bag might always have a leak, and I might never fully prove to myself that I belong at the top level. But none of that matters. What matters was that I had the courage to pursue a goal that scared the shit out of me, that I always pushed back against my self-doubt, and that I had the most fulfilling time of my life training for this race. And none of that would disappear, no matter how the race went. The prelims are an incredibly high-pressure situation because a bad day means that your season is over without ever getting a chance to compete for an Olympic spot. The top 5 finishers in each heat in the next 4 fastest times would qualify to the final. But with a lap to go in my race, I found myself in 6th place. I kicked with everything I had and managed to move into 5th and get an automatic qualifying spot to the final. But I wasn't feeling overly confident. It's Olympic trials finals morning. The morning of the final, I woke up to believe signs that my mom had hung all over the house. I soaked in that love and belief while I tried to push down the nerves that made me want to simultaneously throw up, pass out, and die. Look, I know I've been speaking poetically about self-confidence and belief this whole video, but the reality is that the Olympic trials are incredibly high stress. And while I was warming up for the final, I had to fight the urge to hide in the woods and never return. But when I stepped into the stadium and heard the roar of the crowd, I almost cried. Not because I was scared or nervous, but because I had never felt more loved. The last time I was at the trials, the people cheering for me didn't know me, but this time they were my friends. I had spent the last 3 years sharing my highs and lows and leaning into vulnerability, and as a result, I had never felt more loved or understood. Leading up to this race, I had to fight every day to believe in myself, and that fight did not end when the race started. I immediately got pushed to the back and was having trouble viewing the barriers. Then, my first water jump went absolutely horrible. Honestly, this was a pretty heartbreaking moment and something that I found difficult to race through because you work so hard for months and months, and then there are these split-second moments and mistakes like getting COVID or having a bad water jump that just rip the possibility of being an Olympian away. You can do everything in your power to get there, and if the stars don't align, it just won't happen. I'm not saying I was one of the top 3 best steeplechasers on the track this day. I'm just saying I wish that I had given myself a better shot. Despite having months of huge momentum building towards the trials, it wasn't enough, and I did not become an Olympian. I still fought for every second and every place and managed to run a personal best of 9:21 and place 7th. At the beginning of the year, if I had told myself that I would be 7th at the Olympic trials and faster than I had ever been before, I would have been ecstatic. But in this moment, and even watching this footage back, I start crying because it's not just about missing out on a goal, it's about how close I felt, just on the cusp of being there and falling short. But as much pain as the loss of this goal caused, I gained so much more from it. And if given the choice, I would choose 100 out of 100 times to chase becoming an Olympian and fall short, because it wasn't just about becoming an Olympian. It was about constructing a mental foundation of confidence, self-belief, love, joy, and mental fortitude that will enable me to build upon this year towards big goals in the years to come.
2028.
LA.
LA.